And welcome in everyone to episode 77 of the Level Flight podcast. Just me and Elliott today. Connor's not able to join us. Probably going to be a little bit of a quicker episode today, not as much to talk about as there normally is. One of those weird little schedules where game happens on Sunday night, game happens on Tuesday night. So there's that one day in between where we record. So really just wrapping up one game and doing a brief preview, which we talked a lot about. If you watched LFP live on Sunday, we did quite a bit of chatting about the upcoming schedule. Before we get into any of that, Elliott, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. I was just looking it up. First person I could come up for episode 77 is the Kyle Capobianco episode. So
we were talking about this briefly at the end of last episode where we were trying to figure out who wore it when, and I know Chase DeLeo wore it for a little bit when he came up, and Adam Brooks in 2022 in that little stint that he had with the Jets. So
that is correct.
It has been worn, but only three times since only three times since the Jets have returned to Winnipeg. So it is rare.
We're getting into rare territory. I'm sure once we hit like the 90s is a hockey number, so that'll be probably a couple guys. And then once we get to past 99, it'll be no more. So we're getting to that territory. But let's get into talking about the Columbus game, because that was actually a lot of fun to watch.
It was, and it's really the second blowout in a row. They've outscored opponents in both games, obviously the Ducks game and then this one. They've outscored them 12-1. And for the most part, there really hasn't been any noise being made from the opponent in either of them. I liked the fact that we got two games in a row against, bad teams that weren't unnecessarily close like they have been earlier in the year. I've got a few thoughts on it, but Elliott, what did you see about this one that kind of stood out to you?
Well, I'm sure you'll mention it. I thought the second line looked great. You could single out Tyler Toffoli as somebody who's played really well just as a whole. But even just going back to the Ducks game, like I was in the building for that one. The style of play, obviously, the Jets got outplayed at the end of the first period of the Blue Jackets game, but status quo stayed the same for essentially 6 periods. Like, they were so good. They were good getting the puck out. They limited turnovers. They just kept generating chances. They were really good with possession. Like, it was just all around good Jets hockey against two teams, and specifically, as we talk about this Columbus game, against a team that you should be beating 4-1, 4-0, 3-0. Like, the game should not be close, and the Jets should be dominating, and that's what they did. They gave Columbus really no chance to ever get any sort of hold on the game, which I thought was really good.
Well, if you follow us on social media or if you watched the episode on Sunday, I had a whole thing about this is one of those games where the Jets needed a quick start and they needed to make it seem like Columbus was out of it from the very beginning. And it's as if they were listening, because they scored a minute 26 into the game. And then I think I finished off that clip there that I posted that it said, if the game is close going into the third, I'll be disappointed. I was not disappointed. They scored 4 in the second, put that game out of reach quickly. And it was one of those situations where going into the third was not concerned in the slightest. And you mentioned it too, where we kind of got what we wanted to out of that second line. Multiple points for each of them. Ehlers got his 20th of the season. That's the 7th time he has scored 20 goals in his career with the Jets in 9 seasons. And then you're seeing the chemistry, but that's now 5 points in 4 games for Toffoli since joining the Jets. Like, it's one of those things where it's clicking and you like to see it. The top line still has some work to be done. Like, they did get outplayed at 5-on-5, and I'd be curious to see how things go in the next game with it. But they were getting outplayed but they were getting picked up by everyone else. And it's not even just that second line. We got goals from, Vlad Nemesnikov and Logan Stanley. Like like that was an absolute rocket from Stanley, by the way.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know how he put that. It was a really nice shot. And then I love how his other one that would no yeah the one to end the period at one point was like way off. It wasn't even anywhere. I think he felt he had a heat check and he like just sailed the next one way over
Well,
the end
listen, just
period.
rip it and see what happens.
Yeah.
That usually works for some guys. So, I mean, I understand it. But no, like you're getting scoring from guys that don't typically score. And it's when you need it. Like it's like obviously you got goals from Kyle Connor, Ehlers, and Toffoli twice. So
Yeah.
those are the guys you want to score, but to make things a little bit more out of reach, having Nemestikov and Stanley, pad the lead, it helps. And I have a feeling that going into the next game, it's been 2 games in a row now where the third pairing has been effectively sat out.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming, given the opponent, we're going to see Sandberg and either Miller or Schmidt against the Rangers.
Hmm.
It feels very much like, hey, 2 very weak opponents. Let's give some guys on the back end a rest, get some other guys in, because you're obviously not going to take out a top 4 guy with this much time left in the season. But
Hmm.
you have the luxury of doing that with the depth that they have now on the third pairing, where they're getting those sheltered minutes anyway, so it's not going to kill you. But you're giving those guys like Dylan Sandberg has been an absolute horse this season, even though he's playing a bit more, reduced minutes. He has been the guy to step up if someone gets hurt or when
Yeah.
Dylan was suspended. So clearly they value what he brings a lot, and I think they also see that his minutes are increased. So maybe give him a couple of games off just to reset, and now I'm assuming he'll be back in for these next couple of games.
I would hope so.
I would think like it would be shocking if they weren't. I think there is a level of self awareness as to who you're playing.
Yeah.
But when you're playing the Rangers, who we'll talk about more after we take a break in a little bit here, you have to have all hands on deck, all of your best players in, because they'll take advantage of it if you don't.
Yeah.
And we saw though that against the proper opponent, the certain matchups and everything, that third pairing can still be effective even without those 2 guys. And
Yep.
that Columbus game was a great testament to the depth the Jets have both up front and on the back end. And that's 2 games in a row now where I haven't had too much negative to say. The only thing that I was
Yeah.
concerned about is the top line getting outplayed at 5-on-5 against Columbus, but beggars can't be choosers. I kind of saw that coming because that trio has never worked. But as
Yeah.
long as they get picked up by someone else, I'm content. But to be honest with you, aside from the obvious, I think that's about all I've got on this one. Anything else from you?
Not really. I like the Jets took care of business against 2 of the worst teams in their respective conferences and moved on to this week where it's going to be they showed it up on the Jumbotron when they get back. Like this run of games here to end the season is not easy at all. Like those are probably their 2 easiest. I think they have one more against the Sharks, I believe. Or
I believe so. Yeah.
yeah. Like and
We
that's
got
about
Ottawa
it.
too.
Yeah, and Ottawa. But other than that, like they have a stretch of home games where they've got 3 in a row at home where it's like, I believe it's like Edmonton, Vegas, I think, and obviously the Canadians. But like you have two out of 3 there is playoff teams, right? Like we're now getting down to the end of the season where the Jets don't have an easy schedule. And yeah, they've got games in hand, but like they've got to win a couple here if they want to stay in the division race. But that's a different conversation. And I think just like the team should, we should just look forward to next game, and we'll preview that after a quick ad read.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to hear from DraftKings. As always, they're sticking with us as a sponsor. So we're going to hear from them, and we'll be back in just a little bit. We know hockey games move fast, but with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NHL, you can score faster than anything happening on the ice. This week, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app with code THPN. New customers bet $5 on the NHL and get $200 instantly in bonus bets. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code THPN. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, licensee partner Golden Nugget Lake Charles. 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction, void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. See dkng.com/hockey for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources. NHL and the NHL Shield are registered trademarks of the National Hockey League. Copyright NHL 2024, all rights reserved. And welcome back into episode 77 of the Level Flight podcast. Thanks again to DraftKings, as always, for sponsoring this episode. Always appreciate that. Elliott, it is the start of a very difficult week for the Jets.
Yeah.
I will say maybe not as difficult as what the Rangers are about to face, but difficult nonetheless. Jets head into New York, face off against the Rangers on Tuesday night. So I guess tonight when you're hearing this, against a very tough Rangers team, who I will say probably a little bit tired. Just played 5 games in 7 nights, and I know that they were on a 2-game winning streak. They absolutely pumped Pittsburgh recently, so they've been succeeding, but at what cost? They're also they've got the Jets, the Bruins, and the Panthers this week. So you've got 3 of the top 5 teams in the entire league coming into town, and I don't know how you manage to, deal with that level of competition without breaking, but they're a hell of a team. And there's a lot to sort of analyze here. What are you sort of expecting out of tomorrow night's game?
I'm just hoping the Jets stay competitive. Like at this point in the season, we've talked about it here on the show, and I've talked about it with both Brian and Connor. The Jets have been so-so in the second half of the year against good teams. And I'm hoping, obviously, Toffoli and hopefully if Colin Miller's playing, that's a little bit of a bump into the lineup and kind of a little bit more injection, and especially if Toffoli kind of gets hot here towards the end of the season. But I'm just hoping the Jets compete. Obviously, I want them to obviously win the game. I'm not saying that. I'm just hoping that this doesn't turn into a 4-0 Connor Hellebuck gets shelled because the Jets don't show up and he makes a couple saves and it should be more than 4 and it ends up being like 4-1 because they get a late one. I'm hoping at least if this is a close game, they can take a point. Obviously, this isn't a Western Conference game, so it's not that we need the 2 points as much as possible and the 1 point isn't great. This is hey, if we can get a 1 point against a good team in a different conference and different division, I think that is pretty key for them, especially if it's an even game throughout. Specifically, I'm looking for the first line to somehow find a way to be positive or at least close to neutral as possible. As Brian mentioned, they got shelled by the Columbus Blue Jackets.
We've seen them shelled, but they were in the negatives in terms of their chances and shots, but it was like just below 50%. So I'm not like looking at what they did a couple weeks back where they were in like the 20-30% expected goals.
Yeah, very true.
The Corsi there. But I will say, even being in the negative against Columbus is something I'm concerned about.
If they can at least stay neutral or at least a net positive, whether that be like 55-60%, like I'm okay with that, especially if the second line is rolling. And honestly, the third line has shown some signs of life still. So I would expect, as long as those 2 lines are playing really well and we know that the first pair is going to do their thing, I think the Jets compete in this game as long as, and I'm sure that you may relay your message from what you wanted to see from them on Sunday, a good start. This team has not been great when they've had bad, realistically, they play a style of hockey where they want a low event first period, but that to me is a good start for the Jets because that is their style of play. So if they start out a game playing low event, nothing really happens in the first period. I think that's a good start. Obviously, scoring and getting on the opponent is better, but it would be better than seeing the Jets down 1 or maybe even 2-0 and they kind of come out flat. So hopefully we can see them at least have like a low event period to start and kind of get them to get their legs underneath them and get into the game really. But yeah, I think a good start is probably as cliche as that is. It's probably what the Jets need to get some momentum against these better teams.
Yeah, and I mean, you mentioned it too. Like I've talked a lot about the importance of starting fast, just in terms of momentum and everything. And if you haven't figured it out yet, I talk a lot about things like this on Sundays. So if you don't tune in to LFP Live every Sunday at 9 a.m., and that may seem early, it's not. Put it on in bed, put it on your phone, cast it to the TV. Maybe you have a Roku, maybe you have, an Apple TV. You got anything that has the internet attached to it. Turn on LFP Live. We'll talk about everything you need to hear about the Jets. We previewed the entirety of, that Columbus game yesterday. We talked about what happened on the Friday night. Next week, I'm not exactly sure how we're going to format it or if we're going to do any sort of late start on it. We're essentially functioning as a pregame show because the Jets play the Caps at 11:30. So we're going to be running right into that. But my point being, watch LFP Live and you'll hear me explain things more in depth because we go for an hour there. So I don't feel the need to be succinct in my thoughts, which can come off as rambling, but that's who I am.
Hey,
but
the way
no,
it goes.
I feel like the Jets in a hostile building, if they can, as you said, like even just keep an even keel in the first period, keep it close, I'll feel good. And I mentioned this on LFP Live. I'm going to keep saying it. I truly think if the Jets go into MSG and beat the Rangers, no matter how beat up, no matter how tired they are, I'm putting the they can't beat good teams thing to bed because that Rangers team is better than any of the quote unquote good teams they have seen recently. I think Dallas is the closest. But the Rangers are like tactically, structurally are so incredibly sound. And then Igor Shesterkin, he's coming around. Like he's been a very above average goaltender as of late. Excuse me. Even if it's not like for whatever reason, if it's Jonathan Quick in net who's been hot, he's running, still very hot this season. Like they've got every sort of, I would say, that level of competitiveness throughout the entire roster. They're very driven. They're very fast. They're very skilled. It, as I said the other day, it was like watching the Globetrotters when they were playing against the Penguins. Like, there's the little passes, and they're dangerous everywhere. So it's one of those games where you may be able to get away with some things against Columbus, some things against Anaheim. The Rangers will make you pay for any piece of ice you give them. So they have to play to what we saw in that first half, where defensively, be very strong on the puck, be good in your gaps, because if you give guys like Panarin or Zibanejad or literally any of that top six some room to work with, they're going to make you pay. And I worry that with what we've seen recently, it might bite them. But I also think that they're up for the challenge because everyone knows how good the Rangers are. This is now multiple years where they have been a cup favorite, and yeah. I think this is the chance, though, for the Jets to pull something off because of how tired they might be. Because 5 games in 7 nights and then 3 of the top 5 teams coming up in a single week is just unfathomable. Like truly, I think the Jets schedule is fairly rough, all things considered, with how many times they're playing, and then down the stretch here, how many difficult teams they're playing. I don't think there's any stretch though that's quite like that.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that they got their schedule, that the NHL allowed them to do that. But I guess, you look at the TV numbers and you go, oh, Rangers against good team. Okay, well, that's gonna, right? But I don't know. It's kind of like I'm going to make this reference because it is March. It's like the NCAA tournament. And I'm going to call them, even though they're not an underdog, if they were like a 10 seed and they got to go play the 1, then the 3, then the 2, and then, oh, wait, you get to the final 4 and now you got to play another 1 or 2, right? Like and we're getting to that point in the season where you're probably only playing good teams for the most part, unless you're you got lucky based on the schedule makers. At the end of your schedule isn't good, but like it's gauntlet time for some teams, and the Jets, and especially this week for the Rangers, is one of them.
Before we head out here, what's one guy on the Jets that you could see making a difference, sort of like a guy to watch going into a tough game like this?
Honestly, if this is a game where I think it's not one singular person on this line, but I think it is that third line in a game like this. This will have a playoff atmosphere. This is going to have a playoff style of play. That third line thrives in games like that. Obviously, the Rangers are more so of a speed and transition team, but I think the Jets, if they want to minimize that, they need to play a slower pace. They need to play their game. And so that would be deploying that third line a little bit more than I think they normally normally would, especially with how good the second line is. And I also think that I like the sort of idea of Dylan Sandberg having a little bit of a chip on his shoulder, as much as the games against the Ducks and the Blue Jackets were games for Stanley to kind of get in, get his legs going, make sure that he's still ready to go here. If I'm a player, I'm still taking a little bit of exception to that and going, you know what? You shouldn't have to sit me. I'm good to go. He's also now rested for, what is that? Almost at least 5 days. Like he should be good to go. Like he really should be good to go to have a go here at the Rangers. And so if I had to pick one, I'd probably say that third line if I could single out somebody, but also be aware of Dylan Sandberg to go back to doing his thing.
And I will say before I'll give mine in just a second. Having that third line clicking, and as we said, the key is having that top line, break even at this point, if it's a win, because the Rangers have essentially right now they've got like they have a great top six, but their makeup of it makes it very difficult to match up against. So the Lowry line is going to get one of those, and I'm assuming the Scheifele line's getting the other. Top line is Chris Kreider, Mika Zibanejad, and Jack Roslovic. After they acquired him at the deadline. And then second line is Artemi Panarin, Vincent Trocheck, and Alexei Lafreniere. So you've got two very, very skilled, very smart, and very, quick on the puck lines that if you can manage to limit the space that they have, that's going to get you that much closer to, pulling off a win. For me, though, the guy that I'm paying attention to is because a lot of the times when that top line, even if they get, outchanced, outshot, but they still manage to score a couple goals, the person behind it isn't on that line. The person behind it is quite literally behind them playing on defense. It's Josh Morrissey. Josh Morrissey's ability to, and I will also credit this too partially to DeMello because he's really good at it too, getting the puck up quick and working in transition very well. And a lot of what makes that successful with the top line is because obviously Scheifele's not slow. Connor's not slow. Iafallo's not like the fastest guy, but he's not the slowest either. So getting those guys into space helps a little bit more, keeping the opponent off balance. So if you have a guy like Morrissey who, is just a little bit removed from having that, like 11 points in 5 games there, and he seems to shine on the biggest stage. And he's had a couple in the last couple weeks here. There's been a couple games where he's looked a little bit unlike himself. I think this is the moment for him to once again be like, I'm Josh Morrissey. I'm a Norris candidate. That's the whole thing where like he's been outstanding. And I think that obviously the easiest answer is Connor Hellebuck because I mean, last time they went into New York, he saved 51 of 52 shots and the Jets won. I don't want that to happen. I don't feel as good about that. But I would say you go to the next best player on the team, which is Josh Morrissey. The best players have to be at their best. And if he is clicking along, no matter who's in front of him, the Jets are better off and have a better chance of catching the Rangers off balance. I will say I still have no idea what to expect from this game.
No idea.
When you are hearing this on Tuesday morning, I will undoubtedly be toiling over the fact as to what I'm to expect in the evening, but rest assured, we will be back on Wednesday to record and release on Thursday and talk about it, while also previewing some of the other action of the week because there's a lot of
Yeah.
it, all down the
Yeah.
East Coast there. But Elliot, anything else you want to say before we head out here?
Not really. Just enjoy the game. This is a game that you should try to put on your TV because it's going to be a good opponent. And yeah, like let's get it on. Let's get ready for a good opponent.
Absolutely. And I think this is going to be one of those games that we're going to talk about good or bad for a while. Um, and I feel like it's kind of a subjective thing with what's good. But I feel like objective, you can kind of point to the bad things. But I'm hoping we're talking more good than we are bad come Thursday. But until then, we're gonna head out for the night. As you can see, probably if you're watching on YouTube, if you speed the video up, you actually might see it get darker outside since I've been recording.
Yeah.
So it is currently it is almost 8 o'clock here. So got a few things to get all settled before the night fully comes. So we're gonna get out of here. From myself, Brian, and from Elliot, thanks again for listening to episode 77 of the Level Flight Podcast, approaching 80, another milestone. Um, we'll see you on Thursday morning. Yeah, we'll see you on Thursday morning, and then never too early to start preparing for that Sunday LFP live show. But no, for myself and Elliot, have a great night. We'll see you later.